And ready, set, go. All right, so we're at the point now where we're going to kind of take all the other things we've learned, the composition and the color, and we're going to apply it to a self-portrait. And before you're like, oh no, not self-portrait, just think of a self-portrait as sort of an artsy way of, you know, making a selfie. And and more than anything, right now, what we're going to kind of do is almost make like a filter and code that out and make it be something that you really have created all your own. So what we're going to do here is first let's do a little review of how this comp pulls into art. So self-portraits are something that all the famous artists have do, and you may soon be one too. So we over on the right here we have one that's generally accepted as being Da Vinci, and he did his in this. It's called Portrait of a Man in Red Chalk, and that one has kind of a very kind of mystical kind of way about it, and it's thought that he was about age 60 when he did that one. That's why kind of that old man Da Vinci. And then we'll look here, and what I really liked about the Van Gogh works, and if you're familiar with any of the Van Gogh and you've seen it from the text, his use of color and kind of texture and the way he's kind of really used his impressionistic style to break it down. It's not always dots, but it's like textured lines and curly lines and things like that. And then behind me here, I've got Pablo Picasso, and his is a 1901 piece. He really uses a certain like set of colors to kind of control the mood and set like what you might think he's feeling or thinking from the perspective of it. So as we go through, keep in mind there are all of these elements that we still want to kind of incorporate. For one of them here, the rule of thirds, if you look at how the placement of the portrait is, you'll notice that there's still a certain like rule of thirds with the eyes and sort of going up and down in the middle with the way the heads are kind of placed and positioned. There's also a little bit of an angle in the composition. So remember that good composition still can lead to that focal point, and that can help you tell the story of your artwork. So if you have something in there where they're looking at something or a key point in your picture, you want to be able to try to make sure you include those in the way you crop it or frame your photo that we're going to start with. Also, really be careful about, or not careful, but be mindful of the colors. And the colors that are already in there we can adjust and play around with and do different things, as I'll show you soon. But here I think these really set a certain mood. Each of the colors and the scheme that they've picked have really kind of helped to make that. And also I think in some of the, I should probably show you even more Van Gogh works, because there's certain ones where his mixtures of colors I think create just such an amazing mood. What we're going to talk about now is like this little bit of idea of the Impressionists where we do pointillism. And George Seurat has this famous painting, and when this is kind of like the example of Impressionist art in that late 18th century. So if we look, late 1800s, here if we zoom in on that one, you can see it's actually made up of these very tiny little dots that comprise this whole image. What we can do though, since we're now in like kind of a modern or kind of this neo-impressionism time, the work of Chuck Close is actually really interesting, because he takes photographs that he actually has and then grids them out, and he paints these huge, sometimes story and a half tall paintings of these photorealistic works. He's done many self-portraits, and this particular one right here is one he's done as he was a little bit older, and he was already, by that time, he had a disease that left him part paralyzed, and so he's continued his work, but he has extra help and a way to strap it on. So make sure you watch the video that goes with that in the class. So he grids it out and paints each box, and that's sort of like what we're going to do here. We're going to like take a look and maybe make a piece of artwork that's close to close, or at least the version that I'm making is going to be somewhat close to close. If we look in here really closely at it and zoom in on one, you can see that he's got little boxes and in this case, he has rectangles. We know how to draw rectangles with code. And he's turned them on an angle there. So he's got like a 45-degree angle, the way he's created his. Maybe I'll start off with them square, or you can rotate them. But then inside of there, these sort of like ovals and little bit organic shapes. And sometimes he connects them and makes them a little bit bigger. So this is the idea that I want to take and maybe see if we can't take it a little bit further and do it actually with code and a real image. So let's make some impressionists already. You're thinking, well, there's a couple rules that we probably want to follow here to make this, as a coding example, work well. One, we want to make sure that, especially for our class and the online class and the class at the high school, we want to make sure that it's a school appropriate image. So if it's something your grandma and mom and school administrator can look at, then it sounds pretty good. Choose an image that has really kind of good contrast. I have one here, two different ones here that were like different social media profiles. These are right now at 100 by 100 pixels on my screen, so they're small. We want to kind of use one that's kind of small. The one on the far side there, that one is actually a little bit, it doesn't have a whole lot of contrast, but it has enough maybe at the top to do it. And then the one that is closer to me wearing the shirt that I happen to be wearing at the moment, this one has a kind of special meaning to the school we're at, because this dinosaur-y kind of structure that's behind me that you'll see in the rest of the tutorials, I hope, is on the playground at the elementary school. So any of the students that have moved up to the high school may recognize this and know that I'm actually standing on the play structure while I'm taking this picture of a dinosaur, plastic dinosaur behind me. But by adding all those different pieces together, I think it works out really well. So we are free, if you feel uncomfortable about using these, to use baby pictures, or if you've done artwork before where you've drawn things, that's perfectly fine, but give yourself enough color and stuff to play with from there. Your final works, I gave this to a couple of my friends and asked them to kind of write up what they were experimenting with. I asked them to use baby pictures if they could find them. The one on this far side, she used a wonderful baby picture and really played around with the color and the shapes and made things hard and sharper. The one in the middle, he didn't write in a statement or a little blurb about it, but he was really experimenting with color and creating lines instead of using boxes or circles. You can see if you look really closely on this one, you can see the little lines. And then the last one here, they actually used it to make a interactive kind of drawing. What was nice about this one is that you had to really, you didn't see anything until you moved your mouse around the screen, and then little squares, little rectangles were formed underneath it. So these are just a couple of different examples on where you can take it. You can animate them, you can continue to color them, but I'll show you one particular example, and then I want you to kind of try to take it further and experiment. More than ever, you need to experiment here. So you want to say, let's get to it, let's code it. Well, you know what I gotta say, ready, set, go.